Welcome to Back of the Fridge, where the real stories live. This is what's happening with food for everyday people. From farming to policy, recalls to trends, and what it all means for how we eat and live. I'm your host, the journalist who cooks. It's been a minute since I've sat down to produce this podcast. I just didn't want to force it when the creative energy wasn't in me. But lately, there have been some stories around food that's been pulling me back in. Not just what we're eating, but what's happening behind it. And this week, a few stories have been on my mind, and I've been talking about some of them over on TikTok and YouTube. And people had a lot to say, especially when it came down to recalled bottled water. Over 600,000 bottles were recalled over the week. The brand, Valley Springs Artisan Gold. The company is based in Wisconsin. The bottles were sold at retailers in Illinois and Wisconsin. So what was the recall all about? Unsanitary conditions. The FDA assigned it a Class 2 recall, which means it's not harmless, it's not catastrophic, but if you drink it, you might get sick. You know, water is one of those things that you don't give a second thought. I mean, it depends on where you go, right? So if you remember the episode from Sex and the City where Charlotte only ate chocolate pudding and she refused to get any drop of water in her mouth. And the minute that she stepped into the shower and opened up her mouth just for a second, she realized what happened. And later on that day, she pooped her pants. That has not happened to me exactly, but I will say this. I currently live in Washington, D.C., and I moved here almost about 4 years ago. And when I first got here, I was drinking the tap water when I would go out to restaurants, and every time I would come home, my stomach was bubble, toil, and trouble. I'm like, what is going on with the water here? And then after I spoke to a couple of people, they were like, oh, you know, the way that they clean the water, I guess every quarter, sometimes they have to put certain chemicals in the water in order to get it clean and drinkable from the tap. And I said, you know what? It doesn't sit right with my stomach. So whenever I go out to eat, I do not drink tap water. I order bottled water, sparkling water, San Pellegrino preferably, because I need to see the label on there. In DC, there are some places that have sparkling water, but it's filtered water that they put carbohydrates in, that they put carbonated water. They make it into carbonated water. And I'm like, yeah, that's not going to do. If you don't have the sealed deal, I can't drink it, because when I tell you, my stomach went upside down, and I just don't drink the tap water here in Washington, D.C., especially now with the spill in the Potomac. But that's another topic. Point is, if water is compromised, what does that say about oversight? When people first learned about the recall of the 600,000 water bottles, people did go into a little bit of a panic in my comment section. And I'm like, look, it was just in 2 states. There's a recall has been made. You could return the water. You know what to do. Just don't drink it. And I reassured them, try not to panic. But it is a signal. And it's a signal, I would like to say, that my son, who is now in his late 20s, it's a signal that he actually alerted me to when he was in high school. He was like, Mom, you know what's going to happen next? Our water is going to be unsafe to drink. And this is when we were living in Montclair, New Jersey. And I'm like, what are you talking about? And he was telling me something about something that he learned in class. And he was like, it's just a matter of time. And I'm just like, okay. And so when I saw this recall, I was like, my son was right. Okay, moving right along. Sexual chocolate recalls. Yes, sexual chocolate recalls. That's what I titled this segment. Why? Because Rhino Choco was recalled this past week because it contained undeclared tadalafil. It's the active ingredient in Cialis, which is used for erectile dysfunction. Now, Rhino Choco, it's sold as a chocolate supplement. Now, that active ingredient, tadalafil, it becomes dangerous when it interacts with heart medications and blood pressure pills and diabetes, things like that. So why is that even in that product? Was it on the label? No. And that's why they had to recall it. Now, here's the thing. There was another sexual chocolate recall. It was like back to back, I want to say. And this time it was through chocolate syrup. And it's called, and I'm trying not to laugh because when I initially recorded it on my other channels, it took me forever to get through it because I couldn't keep a straight face. But it's called Boner Bear chocolate syrup. And that contains sildenafil, which is an active ingredient in Viagra. Now, this product, Boner Bear, was sold as chocolate syrup. I don't know much about it. I don't know whether you could consume it, spread it. Like, I have no idea. And I didn't want to Google it because, it's in the name. And if you look at the packaging, you're like, oh my gosh, this is, I'm not going to say it's obscene, but it's, I won't even describe it. Anyway, I didn't Google it, but I did research sexual enhancement and energy product notification list. I learned about that while I was reading through the recall press release. And I was like, what is this? Turns out that the FDA actively tracks undeclared medication ingredients in supplements. Yeah, so there you go. Even though the supplement space is not monitored closely by the FDA, like any supplement that you get, it doesn't go through the rigorous testing from the Food and Drug Administration. And it tells you that on the bottle, like in tiny letters. So whenever you see these feel-good supplements or syrups, you might want to give yourself a second thought, especially if it's a sexual enhancement, because you never know. Now, if you're not on any type of medication for your heart or diabetes or blood pressure, I guess you could go at it. I don't know, but just give your life choices a second thought. Now, food recalls, it's to be expected. It's just the nature of the beast, right? But the pattern of sexual enhancement products being recalled, I just hope there isn't a third, because I could see this being on one of the late night talk shows where they just go at it, no pun intended. And then you have to think about labeling versus reality. Can those people who take part in sexual chocolate enhancements trust what's on the label? I don't know. I guess you're going to take a risk. But at the end of the day, people don't always know what they're consuming. So we've covered water, we've covered chocolate, which are both raising questions about trust. And when you start talking about trust, it just doesn't stop at what's on the shelf. Here's another story that stayed with me. And this is a food policy story. SNAP and probation. There's a new briefing from the Prison Policy Initiative looking at how SNAP rules affect people on probation. And this part made my brain itch. In some states, if you're on probation and you violate a rule, you could lose access to SNAP. And a violation doesn't always mean a new crime. It could also mean something like missing curfew or missing a meeting with a probation officer. So you see, this isn't just about criminal behavior. It's more about compliance. Now layer this in. There are nearly 3 million people on probation in the United States, and more than half report earning under $20,000 a year. That income would normally qualify someone for SNAP, but because of supervision status, some people can still be denied. And those rules vary state by state. There's also something researchers call a chilling effect. Sometimes just being asked about probation status is enough to make somebody not apply at all. And here's the part that really sticks with me. Researchers show that when people have stable access to food, rates of reoffending goes down. So they're not going to commit a crime again if they have access to food, stable access to food. Which brings me back to this question. Is food assistance a support system? Or does it sometimes function as part of the punishment? Because at the end of the day, food policy decides who gets to eat. And if you think a little bit deeper, food access in this country all comes down to money and rules. Okay, let's move on to some food culture and trends. Grocery store loyalty. People are emotionally attached to their grocery stores. I know that I am. There's a new finding from the American Customer Satisfaction Index that reveals shoppers love Trader Joe's. The American grocery store chain sits at the number one slot for customer satisfaction, followed by Publix, H-E-B, Sam's Club, Aldi, Costco, and Whole Foods. Now, when I used to work and live in Florida, Publix, I was loyal to Publix. Loyal to Publix because their sandwiches were amazing. Their fried chicken was amazing. Their prime rib that you could get for like under $10 a pound, best thing ever. And they had a great wine selection. Publix was my jam. I just really loved it. But then when I moved back to the Northeast, I got my Whole Foods, I got my Trader Joe's, and I'm just now starting to warm up to Aldi as it moves into certain neighborhoods. And I'm like, all right, I see you. The prices are cheaper. I won't say that the produce quality is better. I would have to disagree on that. But the quality, obviously, at Whole Foods, at first glance, it looks a lot better. And I have yet to have to return anything that I've purchased at Whole Foods. And as for Trader Joe's, I'm spoiled. I live like literally right around the corner from Trader Joe's, and I could hop in there, get what I need, whether it's chicken, beef. I don't do the fish at Trader Joe's. I've had a bad experience. I didn't get sick. I was just like, this is not how I like my fish. I just would prefer to go to a fishmonger and get a whole fish and do my thing and be okay with that, One of the things I realized as I went through the American Customer Satisfaction Index, I was like, grocery stores are regional. I'm not going to say I always knew that. It wasn't until I left my hometown and I went to Florida and I realized that there were Albertsons, Winn-Dixie, Publix, my favorite. And then when I moved back to the Northeast, I was like, wait, what are all these other grocery stores? And that's when I realized, I was like, every region of the country has different grocery stores. And some people, they don't even realize that because some of them, they don't even leave home. They don't leave their hometown. You'll be surprised. And when they do leave their hometown, they're looking for the grocery stores that they were loyal to. I know I did the same thing. I was looking for my Publix. Could not find the Publix. Okay, moving right along to buffets. Yelp released its trend report for 2026, and guess what's at the top of searches on the platform? All you can eat buffet near me. The numbers jumped to 252%. I was flabbergasted when I read that. I was like, why are people going back to buffets? I get it. Some people enjoy them. Me personally, I stopped eating at buffets when I saw unsupervised children sneezing into the buffet. It was just one kid, but still, I just put them all in the same basket. And I'm just like, oh no, I can't. I cannot eat at buffets ever again. Now, with the exception of Las Vegas. Las Vegas is not my favorite city to visit, but when I have to go there for work and I'll, go into the Strip, they have the best food on the buffets. And I try to go before a big crowd comes in just so I can get to taste the prime rib or the crab legs or whatever they got going on. But other than that, I do not do the buffets. So when I was reading through this trend report, I was like, well, why are people, looking up all you can eat buffets? Of course, there's a reason. Restaurant prices are high, and those people with families, they're doing the math. They're calculating. They're like, well, if I could get all you can eat for this one flat price, I could eat as much as I want, and there's no surprises, right? Like how it used to be in the back of the day. At the end of the day, it's all about control. Consumers are saying, if I'm going to spend, I want options. And again, no judgment for those of you who enjoy a good buffet. Because everything right now, it feels like it's all about control. Price control, portion control, access control. What's going on in the back of my fridge? Right now, I've got some leftovers of blue cheese dressing I made myself. I made it with some mayo, freshly grated garlic, a dash of white pepper, a sprinkle of herb de Provence, lemon zest, a few drops of Worcestershire sauce, a tad of Dijon mustard. Not too much because it could be a little spicy. And then I drizzled some avocado oil just to loosen it up a bit. And then, of course, blue cheese. I picked up the blue cheese from the bonus bin in the fancy cheese section at Whole Foods. I ended up making a salad with grilled chicken, crispy prosciutto, tomatoes, and sourdough croutons for my meal instead of going out to eat or ordering in. And I think that's why some of these stories are sitting with me the way that they are, because when things start to feel uncertain, people try to take control where they can. And for me, that's in my kitchen. That wraps up this episode for Back of the Fridge, where the real stories live. Until next time, I'm the journalist who cooks, reminding you to stay curious and keep cooking. I hope you'll tune in again when another episode is served.